Americans are fed up with this new normal. Inflation, open borders, and billions to non-citizens and our veterans left behind. It's time to stand up. Who's going to do it? No new normal. We gotta take our country back. The Glenn Baker Tanner. Kids don't believe it, but it's a matter of fact. There's something about a Sunday. I believe. Like someday he can change. March 7th, 2024 at 7:30 p.m. Sunrise Field in Fort Pierce, Florida. Bring a veteran. We're going to be standing up for our country because it's time. It's time. Come on, America. Let's get it.
Well, welcome to Get on the Ark. I'm very excited today. We have Glenn Baker, a combat veteran, an entrepreneur, and a patriot, and a Nashville recording artist, and has some amazing music, and he has a concert coming up. So welcome to the show, Glenn.
Man, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, awesome. Well, I was inspired by God to start. He told me, get on the ark. And I'm like, Lord, what do you mean? And he's like, I want you to, share people's testimonies of how they met me and what they've done for their lives and, how their lives have changed. So, I'm excited to hear your story and your journey. So tell us, man, you have such a great resume and you've done some exciting things in your life. Tell me how it all began.
Well, my friend, he brought me up out of the miry clay. And there's an old gospel song. He put my feet on the rock to stay. I was born in a little town in Illinois, but we moved to Oklahoma when I was about 2.5 years old. So I identify as an Okie. I sound like an Okie. I've never gotten rid of that. I still sound like a country boy. I've been in Fort Lauderdale now for about 18 years, but God has been good to me. I haven't always been so good to him, but he's proven himself faithful many times, my friend. And I was sitting in a swing set at 6 years of age in the backyard with my mama when I accepted Christ. And it was a real deal. It was the real deal. It wasn't just an emotional experience. My life changed. I was baptized at 6 years old and I began to serve him. And I was the probably considered the proverbial good kid in elementary, junior high, high school. Never took a drink even through those years. And then when I graduated from high school, I had an opportunity either to go and sing at a big university or go wrestle at a small college. And I didn't want to be a sissy singer. Yeah, how about that? That's some ironic right there. Yeah. So I went off to wrestle at 126 pounds. I think my left leg weighs 126 pounds right now, but that lasted for a full year. I separated my shoulder 3 times, and that I was done with that. It was either get surgery or quit, and I decided to go back into the working world. I really didn't ever want to go to college anyway. I just wanted to wrestle. So I did. I went back and began to work for my dad, and that didn't work out so well. I'd worked with him since I was 8 years old. My daddy was a worker. He had a businessman, and at 8 years old, I was stripping total loss pickup trucks in a body shop. So that was quite a sight to see, I'm sure. Little old 8-year-old kid with a ratchet in one hand and a pry bar in the other, and he taught me how to work, man. But so when I came back from college, I had an ego about the size of Texas and couldn't get along with my dad. And so I went to work at a foundry and ended up joining the military, joining the Army. Shortly after that, in 1990, November the 15th, actually, 1990, it was my 4th wedding anniversary. My son was 4 months old. I got the call to report for duty and was transferred to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where we were deployed into Desert Storm. It's been 33 years ago. Wow. It doesn't seem like it's any way it could be that long ago. When I was in that middle of that thing, the Vietnam vets were the old guys, and now I'm the old guy. Got a little gray here in the beard.
Yeah.
But I packed my Bible up in the bottom of my duffel bag. I'd kind of walked away from God during college. I, found alcohol and found girls and kind of just went wild and ended up getting married at 19 years old and just really never did come back to him. But I made a promise to God and I packed my Bible up in the bottom of my duffel bag when I went overseas, and I was over there for 8 months. That's quite a show and quite a story to talk about at some point. But was over there for 8 months. Ended up coming home, and when I came home, I unpacked my duffel bag, and my Bible was right where I had put it when I left. I never had cracked it open one time. And boy, you talk about conviction at that point, and God got a hold of me and drew me to Him and showed me that He had a calling on my life. I began to search around for what that might be, and of course, He led me back into music. And from 1993 until 2003, I had a Southern Gospel quartet in the Midwest. Had an opportunity to travel around the Midwest and record, and did some shows with some pretty famous gospel singers. There's a guy named Ben Spear. He's still around, from the Spear family, that taught me how to sing baritone in 1993. Did some shows with the Cathedral Quartet and with the Florida Boys and Dove Brothers, and I mean, I can't name them all. There was a bunch of them. Got to meet a lot of the guys that were involved with gospel. Got to see a lot of them that were really good men, and got to see a lot of them that it was just a business, and they were alcoholics, and it was just a business for them, and kind of tainted me a little bit. But in 2003, I was going through a marital problem, and growing up as a Southern Baptist, it's pretty strict denomination. And I find out later on, I think it's a lot of legalism there in some of those churches. But going through a marital problem, I ended up hanging up my microphone and selling my sound system, and I walked away from music. And honestly, I didn't think I'd ever sing again. That was in 2003. So God's got a funny sense of humor, and He allows us some rope, and He allows us some free will, and He allows us to go do things and be places we shouldn't. In 2005, I came out to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Was going through a divorce, actually. And when I was here in 2006, my wife filed for divorce, and we won't get into the details of that, but it was something that probably should have happened years before. And while I was out here, I didn't fight the divorce. I was making great money, and I ended up just going buck wild there, just buck wild for about 1.5 years. God allowed that. Wasn't His plan, wasn't His doing, but He allowed it. But do you know He can grab a hold of us no matter where we are? Do you know that's the truth?
Amen. Yes.
It doesn't matter. And at that point, I was the prodigal son. I was off in the pig pen, and God began to just pull me back. It wasn't like a sudden thing like the prodigal son, where I just showed up and He threw a robe over my shoulders and a ring on my hand and killed the fatted calf. It was a step-by-step and a day-by-day thing. And He pulled me back towards Him, and that was going on for several years. God just guided me back to Him. I got back involved with church and got involved with my Bible studies and things like that. And 2012, I ended up going to North Carolina to help a buddy of mine that was starting a business up with another guy, and restarting a business, actually, and building log homes. And I was a pretty good sales guy. I could sell about anything, and he asked me to come help him, and I did. And within 90 days, I owned that company. Wow. I had a log mill. I was milling logs. I didn't know anything about milling logs. I've never been afraid to jump, though. When I felt like God was involved, I've never been afraid to jump and just do it, So we did that for a couple of years. And in 2014, in July of 2014, I sold that business back to the original owner, who was a retired pastor. 49 years in the pulpit, 25 years, had a TV show for 25 years. And I sold it back to him, tripling the production of what it had when I started it. And I came back to Florida, and I relaunched my life insurance business, and it was doing pretty good. God was using me, and I was in tune with Him, and that's when you think, like the Disney thing says, you live happily ever after. That is not the case, my friend. That is not always the case. And in 2017, in July, 3 years after I came back from North Carolina to Florida in 2017, I got a knock on my door about 4 o'clock one afternoon. It was on a Wednesday. And I answered the door. I was in my shorts, and that was about all. I was getting ready to run through the shower and go back out and work in the neighborhoods for my life insurance business. And there was 10 cops and a SWAT team at my door there. Wow. Okay, I answered the door, and they said, "Are you Glenn Baker?" I said, "Yes, I am." They said, "Well, do you have any, we have a complaint, and do you have any identification?" I said, "Well, sure I do, right here." And I reached up and I grabbed it to him, and he said, "Okay, would you mind stepping out? I got a couple of questions. Step out here, and I got a couple of questions." And I said, "No problem." I did, and within moments, I was against the wall with handcuffs and telling me I'm under arrest. And I kind of laughed. I almost thought this was like candid camera back in the day, you know. But within a few minutes, I realized it wasn't funny. And they took me to Broward County, Fort Lauderdale jail, where I spent 23 days in a jail, not knowing why I had been arrested. They didn't allow me to have an attorney. They didn't allow me to access my cell phone to get any telephone numbers. I finally got a judge to give a court order to allow a access to the cell phone, and they still wouldn't do it because the phone had died and they weren't going to charge it. So I spent 23 days in Broward County Jail. Nobody knew where I was at. My kids thought I'd died, and ended up extradited to North Carolina. Now, I was bound with handcuffs and shackles on my legs in the back of a van for 2 days, driving to Salisbury, North Carolina, where I found what the charge was. And it wasn't funny again. The charge was the former partner, the pastor, had embezzled $22,000 from a client that I had given him when we gave the business back, and had blamed me. And it happened 7 months after I'd left the state. I never knew it had happened. Never heard anything about it. Everybody had my telephone number. Nobody let me know. And they blamed me. And I'm kind of chuckling to myself at that point, thinking, well, I mean, that's pretty simple. I didn't do this. We ought to be able to get out of here pretty quick. 51 more days in that jail. Yeah. An 8x10, 23 hours a day for 73 total days. About a week before I got out, I had caught an infection in that jail cell, and it went into my right testicle and swelled up like a softball. And they didn't give me any medical treatment that day, or the next day, or the next, or the next, or the next. On the 7th day, it went into my ear, and I finally saw a nurse. She looked only at the ear and gave me a antibiotic pill, one antibiotic pill, and sent me back. And I went then from there to the meeting with my attorney, who told me at this point, Glenn, you're going to be here probably another year and a half. The DA doesn't have any evidence against you. It can't go to trial. He couldn't win, but he's not ready to let you go, and not ready to offer you a plea bargain yet. That'll probably be about 6 months down the road. But at that point, if you plead not guilty, you'll be here another year waiting on trial. It's either that or you pony up $50,000 and they'll let you go. And, I looked at him and I said, since you've done such an outstanding job, what I want you to do is get me the name and telephone number of this DA, and I'm going to three-way my sister in tomorrow, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. And the next day, he was at the jail cell, had me sign a piece of paper and let me out on my signature. Wow. No money involved, just my signature. I got on a train in Salisbury, North Carolina on a Thursday afternoon at about 1 o'clock. I got back to Fort Lauderdale Friday night at about 10. Had one of my life insurance clients pick me up. I didn't have any family down here. And I had at that point, found out I'd lost my home, all my furniture, lost my car, it had been repoed. My business, my life insurance business, 4 out of 5 of my insurance companies had canceled my contract, and one of them charged me back almost $150,000 in advanced commissions. And the night after I got home, that infection went into my eye, and it destroyed my cornea. Was completely blind in my right eye for almost a year. Had to have a cornea transplant. The VA did a good job of that about 7 months later, but was still blind for another 5 or 6 months. And, quite to be real frank, I think I spent about a year not caring whether I lived or died anymore. God kept my head above water with referrals in one company that I could keep a small apartment. I found a cheap car, and driving with one eye, driving blind in one eye to go on these appointments and hurting all the time. But he kept my head above water. And then he started showing off. About a year after I had gotten back, it was still in July. It was July of 2018. A buddy of mine from Oklahoma showed up in Florida to work. He was going to be there for a couple of weeks, and he called me. He said, "Hey, buddy, let me take you to dinner tonight. Let's catch up." I said, "Cool, let's do that." And he took me to a little restaurant down on the beach in Fort Lauderdale. And that night they happened to have a live band playing, an 80s cover band. And they were good. They were good, I thought. And I'm first time in 17 years singing. I'm in the audience. I'm laughing. I'm smiling. I'm singing my butt off. And right in the middle of one of those songs, this little Armenian girl that's the lead singer of this band, she and I are friends to this day, came out in the middle of a song while I'm singing and she's singing, and she handed me the microphone. And I just went, oh. Just like that, God said, "I've got a plan for you. It's to prosper you and not to harm you, a plan for a hope and a future." And he began to mold me, and he began to shape me, and he began to give me opportunity, and he began to plant in my mind and in my heart a strategy to serve him in a way that I've never served him before in my life. And today, I still look the same. I still sound the same, but he's created in me a mission. And that mission is to tell this country and this world that I love my God. I love my country. I don't like at all the leadership and what they're doing to us now. And I want to wake some people up, not woke. I want to wake them up to see what's really taking place in our world right now, and let us all come together. We used to be the United States of America. We're not right now. I'd love to see that happen again. So I kind of got long-winded, my friend, but that's my testimony.
Wow, what an amazing story, brother. So when you didn't talk about in 2020 when there was the pandemic.
Yeah.
But what got you part of this? And I know that you're part of Soldier Strong and supporting, helping soldiers walk again with the exoskeleton prosthetics and so what directed you towards General Flynn or for this community that we're in, this America community?
In 2020, I was still just singing. I was singing mainly covers. Earlier that year, my first show was supposed to be March the 28th of 2020. Fort Lauderdale shut down March the 23rd. So I didn't even have my first show with my band. But in late 2019, I was contacted on Facebook by a guy I went to high school with. This is more of God showing off.
Yeah.
And he said, "Man, I heard you got a band." I'm like, yeah, I've started a band. He's like, he said, I'm a songwriter. I've got some songs. Can I send them to you? Maybe you'll like one of them. And I said, "Sure, man, send them to me. I'd love to try something, have some original music," because I hadn't even written any songs yet at this point. And he sent some stuff over. Man, it was good. I mean, professional good. And I loved some of the songs. In fact, I've recorded some of the songs I'm going to be releasing here soon. And so I bought them. I bought the rights to those songs from this guy that I went to high school with. I hadn't seen him in 25 years, something like that. And I recorded them. And at that point, I sent them out to people to kind of get a critique on them. And I ended up sending them to a guy from same high school. We all went to school together, a little old town of 8,000 people. We had 200 in our class. So everybody knew everybody, you know. And I sent him to this guitarist that I went to high school with. And he called me. He said, man, you know, your voice is pretty good. You know, they're not radio ready, right? And I said, no, I know that. It's going to be a demo. And he asked, did you write those? And I said, no, you won't believe who did, though. Do you remember Rod? He said, oh, Rod? Yeah, I remember him. He didn't write them. I said, what do you mean? He said, he's not a songwriter. I used to hang out with that dude. He's just a drunk. And I was like, well, how do you know? He said, dude, I've been with him for years. He said, but he did introduce me to a songwriter from Nashville one time. And, you know, I think I still got that guy's number in an old phone underneath the seat of my truck. Haven't charged that phone in years. Let me see if I've still got it. And the next day, he called me. He said, yeah, I got this number. This guy's name is Rick, and he's a Nashville songwriter. I think Rod stole those songs from him. And I'm like, well, what do I do now, man? I've already recorded this stuff. So I picked up the phone and I called this guy in Nashville and said, my name is Glenn Baker. You don't know me, Rick, but I think I've been party to stealing some of your music. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, do you know a guy named Rod? And he's like, oh, that sucker. Yeah. He's a thief. I said, he sold me 3 or 4. I don't even remember now. I think it was 4. Demos, and I paid him a couple $1,000s for the rights to this music. He's like, dude, those are mine. I said, well, what can I do? He said, well, send me what you've recorded. And so I did. And he called me back a day or so later and said, well, you know, you got a pretty good voice, but it's not radio ready. I said, yeah, I've heard that before. And he said, well, if you want to, I've got a producer down here in Nashville, and we'll find a studio. Come on down and we'll make those things radio ready and let you record them properly. And within 2 weeks, I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and I went into the studio. And then he and I began to talk and became friends. And I asked him, this other guy had sent me a song called Freedom. That's my song. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, it's been written about a guy that's playing a guitar and seeking freedom. I said, that ain't what that song's supposed to be. It's supposed to be talking about what freedom means to all of us individually and how it applies to what's going on in our world today. I said, would you be willing to rewrite that with me? He's like, let's do it. And so we sat down in his backyard in Nashville, Tennessee, and we wrote the lyrics to the song that I released 3.5 years ago called Freedom. And that was the beginning of my journey to go across America and try to bring our country back together again. So that's how that all started. And then to answer your question about General Flynn, I shot a music video for that song. And then about 3 or 4 months into the pandemic, I woke up in the middle of the night. Do you remember, and I'm not a news watcher. I don't watch the news. I haven't watched it in 20 years. But do you remember at the very beginning, they were calling it a pandemic before it ever hit the shores of the U.S.?
Yeah.
Well, they were also talking then about, well, this is the new normal. This is what we're just going to have to get used to. And brother, that ticked me off because I saw the propaganda in that.
Yeah.
And I went to bed one night with that phrase, no new normal, in my head. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, the Lord woke me up. And in 15 minutes, I wrote the song, No New Normal.
Wow.
And it's going all over the world right now. It's being played in New Zealand. There's about 6 or 7 million people a day hearing it. It's on 600 radio stations in the Midwest here in the U.S. And it's making a difference. It's an effectual song, if you will.
It's a great song.
Well, it's powerful, man. I don't pull any punches on that.
Yeah.
But it's not, people think, well, that's a fight song. No, it's really not. It's to bring our people back together and point the finger at who's really the one that's causing the problem. It's the ones at the top that are putting all this division into our country.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of it. I wouldn't change a lyric at this point. I've caught some flack for it, but I've also met a lot of really, really good people because of that song. And one of those is General Michael Flynn. So 2 years ago, I was invited by a state committee woman from here in Florida to come sing at an event that General Flynn was speaking at. And they were raising money for an organization that puts exoskeletons on paralyzed veterans so they can walk again. And my brother, they wheeled up this Marine on stage that had been paralyzed 7 years prior to that in Afghanistan. And with this device attached to his hips down, he was able to stand up on his own out of that wheelchair and walk around this room at a pretty brisk pace, telling everybody now he gets an opportunity to walk his daughter down the aisle someday. Now he can reach the top shelf for his wife. Now he again feels like a man. And I'm in the corner feeling like a baby because I got these glasses on and cowboy hat and tears just dripping out of my beard. I'm crying profusely watching this, but it inspired me and it changed me, and I'll never be the same. We have the technology for people to get back up on their feet that don't have the natural ability to do that right now, but we don't have the resources, and the government will not allot that to take place. So I ended up writing a song, and the name of this song is Soldier Strong, and that's what we're basing this tour on. And our goal with the Soldier Strong tour is pretty mighty. This first show is a test show to get all the bugs out of our marketing, to put the plans together. But ultimately, this show will go clear across the United States, and we'll be working with some major corporations. My goal as an artist and an entrepreneur with this Soldier Strong Pay It Forward tour is to raise enough money next year, over the course of the next year to 18 months, to put 100 exoskeletons on paralyzed veterans so they can walk again. And that's $150,000 per unit right now.
Wow.
So it's a big dream and it's a big vision, but that's where all this took place, and that's how it all came together.
Wow. I mean, that's just awesome. I haven't listened to your Soldier Strong song yet. I'm excited. I'm going to listen to it today.
It'll be released in April, but I tell you what, it's not on radio yet. It's not released. Oh, here's something that'll make you laugh. Did you serve, or do you know somebody that did?
Well, of course, yes. I didn't serve, but my father served. In fact, he was General Flynn's commander back in the 80s.
Really? That is awesome, man. Yeah. So you'll get a kick out of this. I wanted this song to be different than anything out there. I don't like to follow blueprints very much. I like to cut my own path. And so I wanted it to be a little different than anything out there. So I Googled my drill sergeant from Fort Sill, Oklahoma, in 1989, and I found him with a telephone number. And I called him, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, is this Drill Sergeant Timothy J. John?" And he said, "Yeah, who the is this?" I said, "This is Private Glenn Baker, Alpha 1st of the 33rd, 1989. He's like, Baker, the little wrestler, right? I said, yes, it was. I flew to Fort Smith, Arkansas to meet him, and he and I became friends. My drill sergeant is calling cadence on my new song, and he's going to be in the music video with me when we shoot it next month."
Wow, that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think in music, I don't think anything like that has ever been done. But we did it. We did it, and it's going to be cool.
That's great. Well, what other songs, or where can we get your music from? Like where?
You can find my music videos on YouTube. It's under Glenn Baker Band. That's Glenn with 2 N's. If you use one, you're going to get a Irish dude from Europe. Don't look anything like me. Okay. So Glenn Baker Band. All of my social media is under Glenn Baker Band with 2 N's. The website's glennbakerband.us. So I'm pretty easy to find. Reach out to me. Send me a message on Instagram or send a comment on YouTube. I respond to almost everything, unless you're calling me ugly, and then I'll still probably respond.
Wow. So how did you meet Amy Young? Like what brought you to Amy? Well, that's a good question. I actually met a gentleman called Ohio. He goes by Ohio Brett Bold. Do you know Ohio Brett? I sure do.
Well, I met Ohio Brett in Nashville a year and a half ago. I was doing a show with Big and Rich.
Yeah.
Save a horse, ride a cowboy, Big and Rich.
Yeah.
And he, another guy, two other guys I'd never met were coming to this show. One is a YG Nightstorm. Do you know that name?
I do. I've met him.
YG's a good friend of mine. He came, and then a guy named Craig Hudgens. Craig's a great big Marine out of Virginia, and Craig had gotten a hold of Brett and said, "Man, have you ever heard of Glenn Baker?" He said, "No, man, I don't know that guy." He said, "You need to be in Nashville tomorrow because you need to meet him. He's opening for Big and Rich." And so these guys all showed up, and they all stayed with me. I had a big old Airbnb in Nashville, and they all stayed. We got to know each other. YG filmed that concert for me and interviewed me on that concert, and Brett was the master of ceremonies. He emceed it. And these guys and I have all become friends, and they're part of this tour. Brett Bowl is on the board. YG Nightstorm is on the board. They're part of this tour now.
Wow. That's awesome.
And then I met Amy through Brett at Trump Doral at a Reawaken show.
The one in May or the one in October?
The first one, the one in May.
Okay. I was there too.
Yeah. And Amy and I became friends. And then I met her again in Michigan when I was speaking at an event out west of Detroit. And we all had an Airbnb, and Amy didn't have a place to stay. So we invited her to stay at our Airbnb. And this woman is a dynamo. Mm-hmm. Dynamo. In fact, if you looked on my phone, you would see her listed in my phone as Amy Tall Blonde Bodyguard. Because she takes care of me whenever YG's not around.
Wow. You know, YG, I just met YG. I was going to go with Craig Hudgens. In fact, Craig has been here to my house, and we were.
Oh, you know Craig well, man. Okay.
Yeah. So I was going to go on the convoy to Texas, the border, and then I got rerouted. So I met him when they came here to Jacksonville. So that's when I met YG.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, shoot, you're close. Well, not Jacksonville, not real close, but you ought to come down for this show in Fort Pierce next week.
Well, I totally would, 100%. But you know where I'm going to be? I'm going to be in Oklahoma.
Go by and see my son. Tell him I love him.
Yeah. When's your next show?
We are in the process now of scheduling this tour. Like I said, this first show is a test show to get all the bugs out. From that point, then we'll be scheduling across the country. We've got people in Texas ready to take it. We've got people in Colorado. We've got Craig would love to have us up in Virginia. I've got a radio station in Illinois. So we got about 7 or 8 places we can go from here. But when that happens, I'll make that announcement. And you'll be one of the people that'll know.
Okay, great. Because I'm definitely coming to one of your shows. I won't be available for the Fort Pierce, but that's going to be awesome. I'm excited to hear about it. I'm telling everybody about it. And so great.
We're going to have a great time, man. We're going to honor God. We're going to honor our veterans, and we're going to get this word out. We're going to make some changes in our country in a big way. And I look at this as a grassroots movement. One of my secondary goals is to be able to take and inspire one person or 2 or 10 or 1,000 to take and allow God to show them what they've got that he can use. You know, here's the real truth. There's 10,000 people in Nashville that can out-sing me. There's 10,000 people that can outright me. But God chose me, and I can go to Nashville and play in those places that those 10,000 people can't get into. So when God anoints it, ain't nobody going to be able to tell you you can't do it. And I would love to inspire some people to take the talent that they have. And, you know, I've had people ask me, well, Glenn, what do you think I can do? What can I do? I don't have any idea what you can do. I only know what I can do. I can sing a little bit. I can write a little bit. I can make people laugh, and I can make them cry. Maybe even make them dance a little bit. But that's me. What can you do? Can you write? Write. Can you shake somebody's hand and make them feel warm and fuzzy? Shake somebody's hands, but find a way to use that for God and use that for country. Can you knock on doors for somebody that's actually running for office that's a good human being? Do that. Find what your talent is and let God use you. It's not just in the church pew. God said, go out into the world. And that's what we're doing. We're going into the world, my friend.
Right. And he's moving. I mean, he's moving big time. Yeah. I love watching what's happening across the country and what you're doing and just, you know, what so many great patriotic, God-loving Americans are doing. And it's really cool to be part of it. And,
Well, let me tell you about one more. We've got a
yeah.
young man, Ira Dean. Ira Dean's going on this tour with us, and I just spoke to Ira yesterday again. He and I have only met in face-to-face a time or two, but Ira is a God-loving country boy that is a Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter, has won American Country Music Awards, American Music Awards, former original member of Trick Pony. He is a co-writer of Aaron Lewis's #1 song, Am I the Only One? He's a co-writer and writer of several of Montgomery Gentry's songs. Ronnie Dunn's song. He just wrote one with Ted Nugent, Uncle Ted.
Wow.
And this guy loves what we're doing enough to say, Glenn Baker, I'm 100% for you, and I'm 100% in. And he's going to be on tour with us as well. So come see Ira, man. He is a great guy. And congratulate him. He just got married to the love of his life. First time he's ever been married. 54 years old.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Glenn, thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for sharing your story, and continue to follow God and keep leading and directing and sharing your stories with others. So God bless you, brother.
Thank you, brother, for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
And thank everybody for watching Get on the Ark. Talk to you guys soon.